Welcome to Tech London, a show featuring interviews with London's top creative entrepreneurs, startups, investors, design agencies, internet marketers, and freelancers that make up the Tech London online community, which mostly lives on the Slack instant messaging platform. We rotate through both hosts and guests for these interviews, so you have the chance to hear from multiple perspectives on London's tech scene.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of the Tech London podcast. I hope you go back and listen to Sean's episode, which was just before this, about mobility and 5G and green energy and everything like that. And that's continuing the thread. We're going to deviate a little bit from the advertised 5G smart cities thing, because I've been dying to get my friend Colin on here to talk about how to Decrapify work, which is an amazing newsletter that he... Do you want to say who you are? What are you known for, Colin? And what would you like to be known for before I misintroduce you?
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Colin Newlyn. I'm sort of known for Decrapify work now, and it's a bit of a mission to take the crap out of work, really. So I do have a background in tech, actually. I started off on this funny thing called email many, many years ago, when the world of work was very different, and we didn't have computers and stuff. And I think since then, it's got steadily worse, and it's about time we reversed that direction of travel.
Am I right? You were one of the first 50,000 people in the UK with an email address, is that right?
Well, something like that, yeah. I've been on email since the mid-'80s, so...
Oh, my God. There was... my claim to fame is I was definitely in the first 100,000 people to use Trello, so, I don't know if that makes me... I don't know if I crossed the chasm or whatever it is. So, there's your newsletter, which as you know, I love reading, and I love the irreverence of it, and I think it's become even more pertinent through lockdown. And I kind of want to. Usually, I turn out with something of an agenda here, but it's just to tease out how. We're starting a company, or we've started a company, and we find ourselves. This might be a therapy session, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Colin, we find ourselves in busy times reverting to what I call Jack Welch thinking, and we get all Neanderthal and alpha male about how we're doing things, and then when we got a calm day, we go all kind of like Brenny Brown and are nice to each other. But it's so easy to sort of sleepwalk into creating a shitty work atmosphere. And if there weren't a few people in our organisation who say like, "Whoa, that's not what we said we do," we just end up being a shithole. So how do we stop doing that?
Well, I think so. First of all, I think we have to recognise that we have this sort of idea about what work is that's been ingrained into us for a long time, and this idea that work's got to be hard, isn't it? And it's it's got to be serious, and it's all about the hierarchy and command and control, and someone has a plan, and we follow the plan, and it's all got to be nailed down, and it's nonsense, really. But it's a very pervasive thought. So when you get into times of stress, you just revert to the things that come to your mind most easily, and this idea of what work is and how an organisation should work, which is this sort of, it's basically the factory model. I mean, offices are just desk factories, really. This idea of a production line and, people just do as they're told, that's what comes to the forefront of our mind. And so we're working out of this paradigm that really doesn't work anymore, because we don't work on a production line. We're knowledge workers. We're creating stuff. We're using our minds. We're dealing with lots of unpredictability and variability, and we don't always know what's going to happen, and that's actually part of the fun of it, isn't it?
It is. I like, as Sam the pirate says, that latest project about uncertainty.
Yes,
I haven't been to any of the sessions, but I've been following that, and even just like reading the emails about coping, embracing, working with uncertainty has been. I don't know. It's just, I'm going to say rewarding, if that doesn't sound too cheesy, because we realize that when we have our team chats that no one knows what's going to happen. And I think, the whole COVID situation was a big, lesson in how to be uncertain.
Well,
and
it sort of shook us out of a complacency, which I think. I mean, a lot of people. So having worked in tech, with working on new products and services in new technology areas and new markets. I mean, right from the beginning, we were all just making up as we went along because there was nothing to follow. So that's a mindset that sort of came naturally to me. But for most people, work has this sort of false certainty around it. Because why else would you do a 5-year plan if you didn't believe the world was stable and certain and you could predict what was going to happen? Which is nonsense, of course. But in that sort of period between from the end of the Second World War up to the mid 80s, 90s, possibly, the world was quite certain, and you could do a 5-year plan, and you probably wouldn't be like a million miles away from it, Whereas today the world changes, so rapidly, but people are still clinging to that mindset. And if you look at the way people approach businesses, it's all about trying to make things certain. And COVID came along and threw all that out the window. And the managers had to trust the people who worked for them to sort it out. And much to their surprise, the people rose to the task magnificently and managed to, figure out how to work from home, learn all these new skills, keep businesses going, and really show, the value they had when they were given the autonomy and the opportunity to use it.
That was one of the things I wanted to jump on there, because we'll put a link in the show notes to the Anthony Slumbers thread, which is the whole "let's get back to the office" thing,
Yep.
which I can't wait to meet someone in real life to, I'm not sure if you're legally allowed to say injure them when they're raving about getting back to the office, because there's a lot of people you and I know who said some shape or form of like, COVID has accelerated the future of work by a decade. And I know friends that, in our age bracket who are, good parents and nice human beings, but they were appalled that they couldn't see their employees and check up on them and all this kind of thing. They were like, the only reason I want people to come back into the office is so I can watch over them like someone in an Oliver Twist episode. And what do you think happened to that, like command and control establishment type thing?
Well, I mean, in more sort of progressive organisations, there wasn't that approach really. So, I mean, again, a lot of the sort of big software companies and that were able to move to working from home relatively easily because they were largely working in a fairly open way anyway. But for a lot of more conventional companies, it was all built around the office, and it's all built around people being seen and appearing to work and being busy, and there wasn't. That's how people thought they had to manage. You had to sort of see your people and check up on them all the time, and it was very hard for them to sort of get away from that. And we don't always realise quite how ingrained these sort of paradigms and behaviours are. So when COVID happened, obviously people couldn't do that. What we're seeing now is people trying to sort of reassert that and trying to drag people back to the office because that's what they're used to doing. And the problem is the people that they're dragging back to the office have got used to figuring stuff out for themselves and ordering their lives the way they want it done. And they're rather reluctant to go back to what they see as being unnecessary.
Like you and I have sat in a load of things at Herman Miller around this. Is a lot of the data shows that from I don't know, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people surveyed, is that people don't want the office or home. They want to have autonomy and choice about where to work. And I was really refreshed in that because like there was one event we were at, and Bertie and Neil Usher said, who's gone back to the office, and people, instead of everyone glazing over and say, oh no, we all want to work from home, some people said, I love going to the office. I work in I share a house with like 3 other people in Clapham, and if I don't go to the office, I just end up wanting to kill my housemates. And they really enjoy that part of it, which is a really valid reason to do it. And other people I know who are in particularly brainstorming creative things, there's an energy when you're around other people bouncing ideas off and chatting, which however hard you try, and however many iterations of Miro or Teams you use, you just cannot get that online bounce.
You've got to have the. I mean, I used to work in office, and I loved it, but I was quite an early road warrior, so I had a laptop and a modem, and I could work from home when I needed to. When I was away on a business trip, I would be able to work from a hotel room or a cafe or whatever. Not a cafe because I didn't have telephone lines, but certainly a hotel room. And so that's that capability has been around a long time, and now we're seeing it become the mainstream, and people see the benefits of that flexibility. But you still want to be with people. You still want to have those. Relationships are still really, really important, and you can only build up. Yeah, it's much easier to build up relationships face to face. But what we had before was like dragging everybody into an office 5 days a week. For I don't know, probably 2 or 3 hours when you might actually be doing that stuff, and the rest of the time you're just sitting at your desk doing something you could quite easily do somewhere else.
Well, when COVID hit, so I work for myself, and my wife works for a small organisation called the NHS, and so our son could still go to school, and she had to be at work between 8 and 6, and it was all hands on deck where she worked, and so all the childcare fell to me. I mean, we shared it anyways, but I had to take our son to school and bring him home, and I'm really grateful for that, because one, I could never have coped with homeschooling. Like mentally with everything else that was going on. And if I didn't have to take him out, I would probably never left the house out of sheer like panic and fear and anxiety. So it worked really, really well. But then what ended up happening is that I had to organize myself to just get all my work done when he wasn't around, but actually, as cool as it sounds, when both of them weren't around. So now my work day is like 9 till 3. And of course I still think about things in the morning and afterwards. But, I wonder what I used to do with my time, because, I get more done in that small time constraint than I did before. Yeah. And now we don't have to worry about that so much, but I've kept that time constraint, and I'm way more productive between 9 and 3 than I used to be between like 8 and 6 or whatever else I used to work. So it's kind of, snapped me into, paying attention a little bit more.
I think that's the thing, is that people, the answer to things going forward is we need to be more conscious and deliberate about what we do. And in the past, you've had this sort of like just unthinking, turn up at the office. And what you find at the office is lots of people wasting time, procrastinating, wandering around, doing busy work rather than being focused, doing performative stuff. So they look like they're busy and doing important things, but actually they're not really doing anything much, just looking to get promoted, really. And we've got an opportunity now to really think about how we work, where we work, when we work, and who we work with. And that's got to be beneficial to everybody.
So, Colin, I also wanted to ask you about the relationship between horse manure and the future of work.
Well,
I don't know if you
of course. I mean, this is very appropriate for Decrapify work. But so this is a post I put up on LinkedIn a while ago, which is really talking to this way that we get locked into, the way things are now. We can't see beyond them. And it was the great horse manure crisis of 1894. where there's an article, allegedly an article in the Times, warning that in 50 years, every street in London will be buried under 9 feet of manure. And this was not a problem that was just felt in London, but in all the cities around the world, because horses were the only means of transport. As the cities grew and became denser, then it became more and more of a problem that the output of the horses, i.e., the horse shit, had to be cleaned up and taken away somewhere, and there was more and more of it. And as there's more and more people and more trade, there are more and more horses. Well, you can imagine what happened. And there used to be a whole infrastructure in place to get rid of this stuff. So opposite King's Cross Station were these huge holding pens where they would collect all the manure, and then they'd put it on trains and send it up to off to the country to be spread on the fields. But also, because there were so many horses and because they were treated so badly, I think the average life for a horse was about 3 years. And this is where you get the phrase flogging a dead horse from. Then there'd be all these horses that had to be disposed of. So behind King's Cross were all these knackers yards and stuff for getting rid of it all. And it was all very, very unpleasant, as you can imagine, and not very sanitary. People just couldn't see how this problem was going to be solved, because it was just going to get worse and worse and worse. And of course, what happened was the motor car came along and took over, and within a short space of time, there weren't any horses being used, and so you didn't have the problem of horse manure. And now we look back at that and think, well, that was mad, wasn't it? I mean, having all this horse shit carted around the place, and the fact that the streets were so unsanitary with all the muck and also the dead horses, which would often just be left, to be cleared away eventually. So there's a lot of disease because of it. And it's a bit like, I think that's where we are with the world of work, really. I mean, we look at, I always felt that we were heading in this ridiculous direction with, building bigger and bigger offices in the city centre and having more and more crowded railway links coming in. I mean, my experience travelling, I live on the Central Line, and in the 25 years I've been here, that journey's gone from being relatively pleasant, because we're near the end of the line and I always get a seat, to being a crowded, cattle truck at virtually all times. And we couldn't carry on in that direction. And because of COVID, we've now realised we don't have to carry on in that direction. We have the infrastructure in place already, and it's only going to get better, with things like 5G and what's being done with cities to make them more productive. So I think now people are looking back to how they lived before COVID and getting on that train every day and the way they were working and thinking, it's a load of crap, really. What? How on earth did we do that? Why did we do that?
I think that too, because I live in a similar part of town to you, and two things that always struck me is, so when I think you came to this, I would here in Ilford, I would organise a networking event, and I have to work really hard to get 70 people to show up, and this was about 10 years ago. Yeah. And it was flogging a dead horse, and then people from around Essex and East London and Enfield and stuff would come to the networking event, and then when I posted a similar thing in central, like in Euston, where we used to have the co-working space, 70 people would book in a few days. And then of those 70 people, at least half of those people lived in my local area. I'd be like, why do you book here really quickly? And why do I have to ring you up and, beat you up to come to this? And there's this kind of allure of central London, which, all cities have it, but most of the co-working spaces I've actually been a member of have been in central London, apart from, Main Yard in Hackney Wick. Mm. And then I was forced, going back to what you say, we're in this mindset. I would one, there wasn't anywhere in Ilford to go and co-work, and this place has been here 4 years, and I only discovered it a couple of years ago. And the standard of workspace, co-working space is like absolutely diabolical in Redbridge, and all the cool spaces are in town. But now my quality of life of like, dropping my son at school, 10, 15-minute walk down here, like I walk everywhere. I'm richer, not because, I'm earning like millions more, but I just don't spend money in Pret and don't go on the tube and don't do all this. And I'm ever so slightly thinner because I walk more. And the quality of life is just, it's micro changes, but it's huge. And I don't know if I think you do know the Boot the Commute website by the Town Square people. It says something like people in the UK spend like 250 hours 250 hours commuting every year. And it's something like, it's the equivalent of watching Titanic, 100 times or something like that. It is insane the amount of time we spend getting on a train with the same laptop we have at home, taking it somewhere, opening it, and then putting it back in our bag and going back again.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was, when I started, it was like, well, you just get on the train, as long as the journey was less than an hour, it wasn't too bad. If it was over an hour, it really started to drag, and that's what everybody did. And in fact, I've got a bit of a back problem at the moment, which I'm pretty sure stems from lugging a laptop to and from work back in the days when laptops were really quite heavy. And it's sort of like, well, I don't really know why I did that, but that was just the sort of
a really heavy, compact computer.
Yeah, that was the sort of default behaviour, and the contrast was my brother lived in Chelmsford, and he had a very short journey to work, and he thought I was mad, and I thought he was a bit mad because the opportunities weren't the same in Chelmsford. But now you can get the best of both worlds, so why wouldn't you want to do that?
I remember around Liverpool Street in the 90s, there was just like thousands of people with nearly the same kind of black laptop bag.
Yep.
And it was like it was kind of like the thing to
Targus
have.
laptop bag.
Yeah, like everyone looking the same. Anyway, where can we find you online, Colin?
So you can find me. I post quite a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So that's Colin Newlyn, and my website for Decrapify Work is www.decrapifywork.com.
And I don't suppose you do a newsletter we can sign up to, do you?
Well, it's funny you should say that, Bernie, but I do a newsletter, which you can either get to through my website, or you can go to Substack and search for Decrapify Work and find it there.
Substack is the new laptop bag, isn't it? Everyone has got a Substack newsletter. Really appreciate your time today, ladies and gentlemen. If you like, go and sign up for Colin's newsletter. Colin's newsletter is very entertaining. I particularly like nowadays I read it for the information, but mainly what attracts me to it is the references to 80s pop songs and how you manage to wangle them in there. And then keep subscribing to the Tech London podcast. We are definitely looking for people to be interviewed about 5G, smart cities, and how that affects the Tech London community. And as Jonathan always says, just after I'm saying this, is jump into the Tech London Slack, go to techlondon.io and become part of the community. Thanks very much for your time today. Be careful out there. It is a jungle.
You've been listening to the Tech London show. If you're interested in joining the community or even making an appearance on this show, make sure you join our Slack group over at techlondon.io. Till next time.